Hello, beautiful people. Hello, ladies. Hello, fellas. Hello, gentlemen. Ayo, ayo, ayo. Let's do it. Thursday, another massive contests, millions of dollars in prizes up on what should be. I mean, look, we're getting some good Thursday night football games. We're going to have Arizona Cardinals and the Packers soon, Seattle and the Rams. We're being treated. Thursday night football games have all been good so far in terms of coming down to the wire. And now there's actually going to be some top tier teams taking the motherfucking field. So let's get into it. Let's get into it by breaking down every single player. We'll start at the expensive guys, go down to the bottom. This is a very interesting slate because it's a slate where either of these teams don't really use a lot of players. They're really condensed offenses. They use 2 running backs. They use at most 2 tight ends, maybe only 1 really for some of them. And they use 3 wide receivers, and they have the quarterbacks, and they have the kickers. And they're like, normally I'm projecting out like 30 players for at least maybe like a half a point here and there. I only have on this slate like 23 guys projected out, and currently one of those guys I think is not going to play in DS Gridge, who's working through a concussion. The Monday reported practices that aren't actually practices, but they have to estimate how players would do. DS Gridge was limited. He has to pass the concussion protocol by Wednesday. He was doubtful and did not play last week, so we'll see if he can actually take the field, as he has not played since running 3 routes and getting concussed week 1. But we'll go through all of that. All I ask from you is 2 things, 2 quick old things. You hit the like, that thumbs up, bang, smack you with it right there. And 2, you hit the subscribe as it comes up right around here somewhere, as we're going for 50,000 subscribers by the jolly old St. Nick Christmas. Hey, let's do this. Let's get into it right now. Not now, but right now. So we'll do it differently. Instead of just like ranking it by top priorities, we'll go in order of the salary of these players, and we'll start up top with the highest expensive guy, the NFL's leading target leader right now, who last week was actually held down, but he saw 13 targets, so not from a volume standpoint, just only converted 5 catches for 64 yards, was overthrown on what would have been another touchdown by Matt Stafford, who actually was a little bit rattled versus the Cardinals last week. And this is going to be Cooper Kupp. He's the most expensive player in the slate. You get this type of usage when it's like a Devontae Adams Packers slate. Adams will be like the $11,000, $12,000 guy. But it's pretty shocking to see it be Cooper Kupp, right? When you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, I know Robert Woods has not been all that involved, but when you have those other elite type of players, and you have a Russell Wilson who has some mobility, 64 yards on the ground and a touchdown this year, it is pretty shocking. I mean, Cooper Kupp so far has a 44% red zone target share. He's number 2 in the NFL in YAC. He has 21 more targets than anybody else on his motherfucking team. But all that taken into account, I do think he's a solid play on this slate. He's not out of play, but when we're looking at all the guys that are priced right now at the price point of $8,000, $9,000 and above, he does look like the worst one. And when I say worst one, don't jump up and down saying he's been so good. He's averaging 27 fantasy points per game. I completely understand that. But there's 2 quarterbacks on this slate averaging 24 fantasy points per game that are cheaper. Matt Stafford, his quarterback, being significantly cheaper. If Cooper Kupp does not score 2 touchdowns at $12,400, he's probably not going to need to be the captain. Now, you can be in your flex all you want if you find the money, and finding the money on this slate is going to be a challenge with the lack of any type of value really at all. I mean, you have some kickers, of course, as always, but a lack of any type of value. Kupp is fine. He's not a insane priority right now. Again, I'll be live at 6 p.m. East Coast time before the games start on Thursday. Hit the subscribe button so you know when we're going live. And we talk through Q&A. I talk about leverage plays, top leverage plays on the slate. And what that basically means is these chances of these players being in the optimal lineup versus what their ownership is. So you can start to see leverage. Now, will Cooper Kupp, because he's so expensive, start to come out as a leverage play like some players were last night, like a Keenan Allen and a Darren Waller on the Monday night slate ended up being leverage plays? Did they pay off for you? No, but they were insane leverage if they had paid off in a major way. So Kupp looks fine, but again, I don't think he's going to be as good as some of these next guys in the price range, like the quarterbacks. Both quarterbacks look fantastic right now. I mean, you're getting a very fair price point for Russell Wilson, who's only number 26 in the NFL in attempts, but that's because he continues to be as efficient as he has been, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in NFL history right now, because although he's not throwing a lot, he still ranks top 8 in the NFL with 298 yards per game. He has a very condensed offense of when he's dropping back to pass. He's not even throwing to the running backs these days. Chris Carson only 3 targets the last 2 weeks. It's straight up Tyler Lockett, it's straight up DK Metcalf, and a little bit sprinkled in of whoever the tight end is, which, by the way, last week missing was Gerald Everett. He tested negative on Monday for COVID. If he tests negative on Tuesday and Wednesday, he'll be good to go. He'll be back in the starting rotation, and then he would be the number 3 option. So there's some murky pieces here in terms of injury news for Gerald Everett with really COVID illness. He's expected to play. He's trending that way. And D. Eskridge with a concussion would be the wide receiver 3 ahead of Freddie Swain if he was indeed able to pass that by Wednesday. Right now it's leaning probably that he won't, but it's still kind of early. So Russell Wilson is basically like tied right now. I have both Russell Wilson and Stafford. I have them both projecting out for like 3 more points than anybody else in the slate. This looks like a very good slate to get at least one quarterback. I'm completely okay getting both quarterbacks on this slate. You have Matthew Stafford, who comes in a little bit cheaper than Russell Wilson, $1,000 cheaper than Cooper Kupp. Stafford's only number 22 in the NFL in attempts, but because they've been efficient, because Cooper Kupp has been getting a lot of targets downfield, Deshaun Jackson and Van Jefferson quick strikes, he's number 5 in the NFL with 314 yards. He's number 2 only behind Lamar Jackson with over 10 yards per attempt right now. Just insane. And he's projected by Pro Football Focus to have a lot of time to throw with his offensive line versus this Seattle defensive line that's pass rush does not rank elite. It's not awful, but it's at best average, at best league average. Should be a lot of time for Matt Stafford to throw the ball, chuck the ball around. So that's why the Cooper Kupp conundrum starts to become hard when you're looking at captain spots or even getting him into your lineup, because he takes up so much salary to where these other studs start to come in. Cooper Kupp is more than $2,000 more expensive than DK Metcalf, who I told you that Cooper Kupp has a 44% red zone target share, and it's a small sample of 3 or 4 games with not a lot of red zone targets. DK Metcalf has a 60% red zone target share. He has a 32% target share compared to Cooper Kupp's 35%. Yes, Cooper Kupp has found the end zone more, and yes, Cooper Kupp leads the NFL in targets, but DK Metcalf is an alpha. DK Metcalf himself has 33 targets so far this year. He's running insane routes. I don't think Jalen Ramsey is going to stay on him. I don't think he can stay on him for a 99 percentile speed and 99 percentile size monster. I mean, this is the man of Julio Jones, looks like a little man next to DK Metcalf. This is one of the freaks of all freaks that you will ever find coming into an NFL draft. How did he go in the motherfucking second round? I don't know. Shake your head, Philadelphia Eagles fans. But $10,200 DK Metcalf, it sounds like he's a lot of money at $10,000, but he's the 4th most expensive guy in this slate, which relative to the other players makes him a very nice value. I'd expect 8 to 10 targets out of DK Metcalf. He is probably my favorite wide receiver play above these $9,000 receivers, but his teammate Tyler Lockett grades out very similar to him. Very similar. I have Metcalf for one more point, but you save money on Lockett. You save $600 on Lockett. Lockett got banged up a few weeks back, but he looks okay. He is still sort of thriving on these boom bust type plays like you saw last year, the big busted plays that are kind of schemed open for him. But he's still the team leader in routes run with 123. He has 20 catches over 300 yards, and he has the 3 touchdowns, which is propping him up. Again, he's significantly behind Metcalf through 4 weeks. Metcalf so far already has 8 more targets than him through 4 weeks, 2 targets per week. That's a significant amount if you take that over a full season. And Lockett these last couple of weeks has regressed. I mean, the first 2 weeks of the year, he was the luckiest wide receiver in the NFL if you take luck or consideration of what his actual points were versus what his expected fantasy points were based on his volume. Him, Jamar Chase, those types of guys, it basically just means you're thriving off of touchdowns and like 1 or 2 plays a game, which has been Lockett's MO for like the last year and a half. That being said, though, he's still seeing volume. It's not like he's not seeing volume. He's seeing 6 or 7 targets per game, and if anything, he might actually be able to get away from Ramsey in some of these schemes. Now, Jalen Ramsey has been in the slot a lot. It's a lot of zone coverage. It's not straight up man-to-man, so I'm not too concerned about any shadow matchups for either of these wide receivers between Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. But early on, I think that Metcalf, as of this, we'll see what leverage looks like. I think that Metcalf is probably my favorite play at that $10,000 or above range, or these 5 guys we've talked about. Darrell Henderson is somebody that you have to talk about. You have to talk about Darrell Henderson because he's played in 2 games with Sony Michel when they're both healthy and out there, and he's been the clear RB1. Just look at week 14. Darrell Henderson returns. He sees 14 attempts to Sony Michel's 3. And then in the receiving game, he sees 34 routes to Sony Michel's 3 routes run. Michel 3 routes, 0 targets. Darrell Henderson 34 routes, 6 targets, catches 5 of them for 27 yards. So as a quick reminder, you saw 20 opportunities for Darrell Henderson to 3 for Sony Michel. A straight up backup running back when Henderson is healthy. You could even look at week 2 for similar usage between the two. You see Henderson seeing 20 opportunities to Michel seeing like 7 to 10 opportunities. So Darrell Henderson at $8,400, that's expensive for a running back, but for a guy who probably comes into this game, first of all, he comes into this game as a favorite with a 28 team implied total in a matchup against Seattle's run defense that at best is average and for the first 2 to 3 weeks in a small sample was one of the worst in the NFL, so it's kind of propped up by these small outlier weeks right now. But Henderson for me looks like a guy who might be a leverage play here, right? He's kind of in this price zone when you're looking at the ranges. You can get up to the wide receivers and the quarterbacks. He's in this no man's land as the only guy in the $8,000 price range, and then below him is Robert Woods, who has a couple touchdowns. People know the name. People are expecting him to eventually come around with more volume. Chris Carson, who is now cheaper because his role is diminishing. Those guys might get into lineups more, which I think is going to end up giving Darrell Henderson some value and some leverage, and I do like that. He is a yes. Robert Woods is on here. Robert Woods, you have to be concerned. Robert Woods has scored both his touchdowns in points of the games that are basically out of hand and don't matter. When the game is close and actually you need the game script and rely on your key players, the Rams are turning to Cooper Kupp for sure, Darrell Henderson, and Van Jefferson over Robert Woods right now is a number 2 2 security option on this team in the passing game for Matt Stafford. I mean, Robert Woods only has 24 targets, 6 targets per game so far, which is not awful, but it's not great. He is 7,600. You do get a nice discount on him, but there is some concern. 51% slot use. You would expect Robert Woods by the end of the year to have more than this 5 or 6 targets per game, more than just these garbage time touchdowns that don't really matter or affect the score. I'd be a little bit concerned about Robert Woods at 7,600. He's a yes right now for me. I can see why people jump to him as a captain with 2 touchdown upside. I think all that looks good. He grades out at this point for me as a solid play, but not an elite play. So he'll kind of come down to the ownership. And now, before we start to get into some of the rest of these players, because we're hitting a lot of them early on, I do want to let you know about the props I've taken. Again, as always, take advantage of this because the offer might be ending soon. You get a free bet up to $100. You can use the bet whenever you want. You can use it on this slate. I'm waiting for more props to come out, so you don't have to tail this one. But I do like DK Metcalf over 76.5 receiving yards. I have him for 83 receiving yards, so I'll take that. And I have Matthew Stafford for 312 passing yards. His over-under is only at 295.5. So go ahead and smash that right now. I mean, for comparisons on other sites, his over-under was set to like 302, 303. So you're getting a fantastic discount on Matt Stafford on Prize Picks. So use the code SAL. You get free $100 bet. That's simple. You go to prizepicks.com, you sign up, you say, hey, Sal sent me. The promo code is SAL, my name, and bam, you get a free $100 bet matched up to $100. Take the over on DK, take the over on Matthew Stafford. There's your schmacks. There's your props. Why not take some free dollar rooskies? Why not get some action in? You can take some more bets. You can add more to this. You can win some more dollar rooskies. You don't have to parlay them. That's the great thing about Prize Picks. So you can go ahead and use the code SAL to get that offer. We can now scroll up to the remaining guys that we want to talk about here. You have Chris Carson, whose role is diminishing. He is very cheap. Like, he's going to grade out nice in a lot of projections because a lot of projections will take into account the whole season, some historical data, project forward somewhat. But this is pretty important. He's losing work to Alex Collins. In week 4, without any reported injuries, he only had 25 snaps to Alex Collins 22. He basically split this backfield damn near 50-50 with Alex fucking Collins. And now he's only seen 6 total targets through 4 games, only 3 targets on 20 routes through the last 2 weeks. That's a 6% target share on 55 total routes run this year. I'm a little bit concerned about Chris Carson's usage. Chris Carson is turning into this running back that's going to get 14, 15 carries on the ground against a very good Rams run defense. Have you heard of the guy named Aaron Donald in the middle of the fucking run defense? Yeah, against that guy, he's going to get 14, 15 carries. You hope that he averages 4 yards per carry. He's going to have 60 to 65 rushing yards in this game. And then if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's a bust. And even if he scores a touchdown and gets you 10 to 12 fantasy points at 6,600, it's not looking good. The guy's not seeing targets. Can they flip the script this week knowing that they'll face a good pass rush and try and get some quick screens to Chris Carson? Yeah, maybe, but we haven't seen it this whole entire year. So I'm a little bit concerned about Chris Carson. That's why he's not a yes. I'm similarly concerned about Tyler Higbee, mainly just because he's up and down at this point. He's not a big fixture in this offense. For a tight end, he's fine, but he's not the cheap tight ends we've been seeing. He's not Jared Cook at $4,400 like we got on Monday Night Football. He's $5,600, so he actually has to produce. He can't just get you a 4-catch, 48-yard game and you think that that's okay at $5,600. It might be if this is a low-scoring game, but for the most part, especially with some $4,000 solid options below him, it's not that great. Now, 18 targets in 110 routes. He's definitely involved as a pass catcher. He's running 27.5 routes per game, but it's been an up and down season. I would expect 4 to 5 targets. On my Patreon projections, I have projections, ownership, I have rankings for GPP and cash for this slate and all the slates, a lineup optimizer, a Discord with about 900 members. I currently have right now Tyler Higbee for about 10 fantasy points. I would prefer Chris Carson to him in a similar price range. I'd also prefer this next guy in Van Jefferson, who's one of the best value plays on the entire slate. Like, if you take out the kickers for their cheap price point, Van Jefferson might be the best overall play on the slate. He's very similar in this regard to how Jared Cook was on Monday night. They play totally different positions, but they're both cheap. They're both in this $4,000 range, and they're full-time players. Van Jefferson is more of a full-time player than Jared Cook is for the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, right now, Van Jefferson is currently averaging 29 routes run per game, and he's basically the number 2 receiver on this team, like ahead of Robert Woods on how they're using him so far. He has 13 catches, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns on 18 targets, and he's a solid receiver. They're running him on these interesting routes where he goes downfield, but also has some nice intermediate routes, so it's a higher conversion rate on his targets, whereas Robert Woods is just these weird short routes that really aren't relying on anything. If he doesn't get those 2 garbage time touchdowns, it's not translating to much. Van Jefferson's yards per reception, because of that deep routes revolved in there, is 19.4, so he's top 10 in actually how far his targets go downfield, which increases the upside. He's a very solid value for this specific slate because this slate does not offer much value, so the 4K range and the 3K kickers are where you're basically going to find all your value. Outside of Jefferson, you have to wait and see on guys like Freddie Swain. I'm not that interested in Freddie Swain. D. Eskridge might return for this game, the rookie, and then he would operate as the wide receiver 3, which at $200, which would make him a great play. But as of right now, if he doesn't play, give me Van Jefferson. Give me some cheaper 4K guys because Freddie Swain is going to probably run in this game. I mean, what you're getting out of Freddie Swain on the season is 75 routes run. You're basically going to get Freddie Swain to run 20 routes in this game, and he'll probably see 2 to 3 targets because the Seahawks don't throw that much. They don't throw that much to their wide receiver 3 in general. And Freddie Swain, over 50% of his production, over 50% of his fantasy points this year. You might look at him and say, what does he got? Freddie Swain, 8.9 fantasy points per game. Now, that's pretty good for a showdown slate. Over 50% of that, 4.5 fantasy points per game, is on one 50-plus yard touchdown that was a blown coverage. So he's wide open. I could have fucking caught the touchdown and scored, right? Anybody could have. You could have. We could have crawled it in. He was that wide open on a blown coverage. It's not like he ran a good route. Now, he is a younger player, so maybe he has some uncapped upside, and it is a showdown slate, so that's why I keep him in play. He's not a no for me, but he's a little bit expensive for his role, and he becomes completely out of play if Dwayne Eskridge is indeed able to pass the concussion protocol by Wednesday. If you go down a little more, you see Deshaun Jackson. Just note, he's not that involved. He's only played 3 games. He's seen 36 total routes run, so 10 to 12 routes a game, but on those routes, he's actually being targeted this year. He has 9 routes. He has 9 total targets, so he's basically being targeted every 4 routes that he runs. You can expect 2 to 4 targets. 4 out of his 9 targets have been 20 or more yards downfield. It's hard to really like Deshaun Jackson. I think he comes in maybe a little over-owned because of his name and his price point on a showdown slate. I'll take Van Jefferson. I'll take his teammate Gerald Everett below him at this point. Like, Gerald Everett is the Jared Cook price point right now. Gerald Everett, assuming that he can return from COVID, tested negative on Monday, assuming that he plays, he is being heavily involved in this offense relative to other guys that are like the number 3 options behind Lockett and Metcalf. Everett on the season is basically operating as a number 3 pass catcher. 8 catches, 77 yards, a touchdown. He got that one nice game in week 3 where it was a little bit more volume, separating himself from Will Dissly in the routes run by a wide amount, caught 5 balls for 50 yards. Hey, 5 balls for 50 yards on a showdown slate of 4K, you're probably in the optimal lineup. He's ran around 70 routes through 3 games, so I would expect somewhere between, 24 routes run in this game for Gerald Everett. That's going to translate to 3 to 5 targets. We'll take that with some red zone upside like you saw week 1 when he scored the red zone slant touchdown. We'll take that out of Gerald Everett at $4,000. Again, a slate that lacks any real value. Gerald Everett, Van Jefferson stand out in these price ranges. If we continue to scroll down to the rest of the players that could potentially be in play on this slate, you're going to find Will Dissly. Dissly's in play only if Everett misses. It's trending that Everett will play. Otherwise, Dissly's going to run like 6 to 8 routes, and he's massively overowned because he's priced as if Everett might miss this game. The kickers have to be in play. I actually have Matt Gay as a yes. Matt Gay is averaging over 10 fantasy points per game. I have him projected for around that in this game. I also have Jason Myers projected for like 8.5 to 9 points. On a slate with not a lot of value, and these kickers actually being cheap, like normally kickers are in the 4K range. These guys are cheap on a slate with not a lot of value. Both teams have high team implied totals. If one of these kickers scores 10 to 12, they're definitely going to be in a winning lineup because we're not looking at much after that. You're looking at Alex Collins, who, yes, Alex Collins is taking some of work right now away from a Chris Carson, but even then, it's not that great. Like Alex Collins saw 12 touches last week, 2 receptions, which is good to see. And at $3,200, you get 12 touches out of Alex Collins. That's pretty solid. But outside of a touchdown, if you're getting 12 touches for 50 yards and 5 or 6 fantasy points out of a $3,000 player on a showdown slate, just give me the kickers instead. So you kind of need the touchdown or bust upside out of Alex Collins because, again, 10 carries for 48 yards is a great day. It's great, almost 5 yards per carry. But what is 5 fantasy points doing for you when the kickers are going to be scoring 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Both defenses are fine, especially because there is a lack of value. So there's a higher percentage chance that these defenses are in the optimal lineup. That doesn't make it a very high chance, a higher percentage chance. I'll take the Rams defense for only $200 more. They project out a little bit better for me. And we can close it up with some of these players. Like Sony Michel is on here. He's got to stay in play. But what you just saw last week was 3 opportunities for Sony Michel when Darrell Henderson's back. What you've now seen is Sony Michel operate as a clear running back 2 with Henderson in there. So if Sony Michel comes in 2 games with Darrell Henderson playing, Sony Michel has seen, and in one of these games he took on the workload in the 4th quarter because you saw Darrell Henderson get hurt. So if you take that 4th quarter out of it, you end up seeing Sony Michel in games and quarters where Darrell Henderson is healthy, only seeing right now 7 opportunities and only seeing right now 0 targets on 9 routes run. So you're getting absolutely no work here. I would expect Sony Michel in this game to see 4, 5 touches, 4 or 5 touches if you're not getting a touchdown, even at $1,800. Even if he runs wild, 4 carries for 40 yards, right? 10 yards per fucking carry. Those 10 yards per carry, those 4 fantasy points aren't doing anything for you at $1,800. You probably need the touchdown, or you need a Justin Jackson game from Monday Night Football where he catches 3 or 4 balls. And that's not going to happen when he's a worse pass-catching running back than Darrell Henderson, and he's just not running any routes when Henderson's healthy. So again, a guy who looks like a sexy name, these backup running backs getting some usage, Alex Collins and Sony Michel, they're just overpriced and they're not being used enough. Johnny Munt is a tight end who's mainly a run blocker and pass blocking tight end, but he has ran 25 routes. Expect 6 routes run. Expect maybe a target in this game. Dwayne Eskridge is the unlock button. Dwayne Eskridge is the only way we find value on this slate. Otherwise, the value's in the kickers, in Van Jefferson, some Deshaun Jackson. Gerald Everett becomes the best cheap play. But if Dwayne Eskridge, who on Monday is limited and missed last week in the past couple weeks with a concussion, if he can on Tuesday or Wednesday pass the concussion protocol and play, and it's a concussion, so if he passes it, it's not lower body, he won't be limited. He's $200 and he will operate as the wide receiver 3 for the Seahawks team. He is the unlock button for the entire slate. Otherwise, we have 5, 6 really fucking expensive players. You're going to maybe have to try and get away with a Van Jefferson captain lineup to really fit in all the studs, which doesn't sound that bad. But other than that, if Dwayne Eskridge does miss and we don't get that $200 play to open up, your cheapest valuable guys are these $3,000 kickers. I'd only probably want to play one of them. Penny Hart at $200 operates as the wide receiver 4 in Seattle. They barely use their wide receiver 3, so Penny Hart's 12 total routes run on the season through 4 games as the wide receiver 4 is not that encouraging. So this is an interesting slate. Normally there's like 30 guys I project out for points. This week, if Dwayne Eskridge misses, it's only going to be 22, which condenses your player pool. It's hard to fit in a lot of guys. If you're trying to play an expensive captain this week, I mean, good luck. You're probably going to have to play a defense and a kicker to fit it all in, which makes it interesting to play these Deshaun Jackson, to play these potential cheaper captain. Van Jefferson stands out as a really nice value captain. So thank you for tuning in. And before we go, I do want to let you know, like we did the other day, we built a lineup over on SuperDraft. SuperDraft is the easiest place to win $8,000 for the Showdown slate, $50,000 for the main slates, because their contests don't fill. DraftKings and FanDuel spend billions of dollars on marketing budgets, so their contests fill 100%. I'm like the main fucking promoter for SuperDraft, this schmuck over here, so we're sending only people who see these videos over there, and the contests are only filling right now at 70% clips still, and we're week 4, week 5 of the NFL season. What does that mean? Well, if it fills at 70%, you automatically beat 30% of the field just by entering a contest. Your first money should be going to SuperDraft contest. That's where your first contest, your first dollar rooskies should be going. Now on this slate, if I look at my SuperDraft projections, I think that your best captain options for upside are the Seattle wide receivers. They both have nice multipliers. We'll take DK Metcalf here. We got his over props, so we'll take him in the captain spot, and then let's build out the rest of the flex spots. And if you don't know, SuperDraft is a multiplier format, so there's no salary caps. You can play whoever you want, but based on what their multiplier is, Russell Wilson 1.65x, whatever he scores, you multiply it by that multiplier. So we'll take DK Metcalf in the captain spot. Other guys who look just as good as Lockett, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford, but kickers usually look really good. So Matt Gay has a high multiplier of 2.25x. That looks good. We'll take Lockett and Stafford in here. You can pick your final guy. I think that other players like Russell Wilson look solid. Kupp looks okay. Carson has a nice multiplier. Other sneakier options with high multipliers like Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee. But again, if you want to use the code SAL, you get a free $20 so you can play with. You're going to be getting your best chance, your best odds. When you have to beat 30% less people just by entering a contest, those are clearly your best odds to place and win money and win the first place prize pool. So use the code SAL, get $20 over on SuperDraft for free when you sign up. Get a nice credit to check it all out. You all rock. Subscribe before you go. Like the channel. I'll see you at 6 p.m. East Coast time on the live stream for Thursday Night Football. Almost said Sunday night. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. That thick-ass pumpkin's looking sexy over there. I appreciate you all a ton. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, gang, and stay reckless.